trainers. That was too nuts.
All right, so let's get going on our Midrash. And before we start the Midrash, though, let's acknowledge that we have eaten and are satisfied. Text says, "You eat and be satisfied, and you'll bless Adonai your God for the good land He has given you." So let's do that. Abba, we have eaten and we are satisfied. We thank you in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So this was our Torah portion that we read together. Behar-Bechuqqotai.
That's the problem. I couldn't read it in English, so how am I supposed to read it in the Hebrew?
Right.
I
It's
got
often
part of it.
transliterated with a K.
I got the top part, but the I is the one that threw me off because is that a yod?
Yes.
So I couldn't tell on that one. And the other one's a kof, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. It's and so there would be a Q as a transliteration for it. It has a dagesh in the middle of it, so you
Right.
double it.
Ah. Okay.
But most times you see it transliterated as with just one K. Bechuqqotai. So that's most often transliterated.
Okay.
But the key word of that, the chuch, in the middle, the two letters, that would be the second and third letter, Bechuqqotai,
But the hay and
the chet,
is it a chet?
it's a chet. And that is the key thing, because chuch is one of the types of mitzvot, right?
But I'm not talking about that one. I was talking about the letter before it.
The bet?
Bet,
No.
bet, hay,
Bet.
fresh.
Hay.
No. For the second word, it's bet chet,
Bet, cool.
kof,
Top, yod.
tav, yud.
Got kibbutz.
Yeah, Tav, Yod, I got that.
I didn't
No,
know
I got
that.
the kof. I'm talking about the letter before the kof.
Chet.
Bet.
Oh, okay. I thought there was a space up there in between that last leg.
No.
It's not.
Just turns.
But the chok and the kuf together is a chok, is a type of command that
Right.
it's the kind that you do it because Yah said so, right? It's not really something you can puzzle out, or there's not a specific reason given for doing it, except for
Right.
you do it because I said
Of
so.
of the three types.
Yes, that's right. All right. So the first,
On letters that have that dagesh in the middle, I mean, I know like bet, it changes the sound of it, but
Mhm.
you're saying you pronounce it double?
yes, it would be like it'd be like there was two Q's there, into the kuf, and it starts another kuf at the end of it. So yeah.
I've never heard that.
What's it sound like?
I
Hmm?
prefer like
What's it sound like?
that dog.
Sounds like it's long.
Well, I say it's Bechuqqotai. Bechuqqotai.
Luke? Okay.
That's interesting. Yeah, the bear.
So this was our first portion, the first verses of it, where we get the word Bahar, Bahar Sinai, and one of the things, the Beit in Bahar, I think I have a slide that discusses it, but it's usually translated as on, but it could be what? How else could you
It's
translate?
like in.
In.
It's
Uh-huh.
like in-house, right?
Yeah.
Like
By-
in the mountains as opposed to on the mountain.
Yeah. And
This one's on
it-
the mountain.
in the JPS 1917 translation, it translates it as in the
In the
mountain.
mountains.
Yeah.
Or in the mountain.
I think it says in the mountain, but yeah.
They were all hard.
That's debatable, I guess, because like
Hmm?
I said earlier, when it was.
But what you're talking about is the JPS, right?
JPS 1917, not the more modern one. The modern one
Right.
translates it more.
On.
What's JPS?
Jewish Publication Society.
Mhm.
JPS 1917 was the first kind of Jewish translation of the Tanakh.
The Nog.
I bought one of those.
Well, is it
It's in the public
is it
domain.
The
Jake-
Babylonian Talmud or the what's it saying? The Babylonian Talmud versus the Jerusalem Talmud.
I'm not sure what I can understand what you're asking.
So in the Talmud, don't they comment on that?
Well, how would you, if the letter can mean Beit, the Beit can mean in or on, how would you comment on that?
That's what I'm asking. How did they comment on the Talmud?
If it's the same letter, can mean either or.
Okay, the JPS sometimes can be liberal.
Can be what?
The JPS?
Can be what? Liberal or
The
literal?
version JPS he was talking about? Way
No,
back
no,
when?
no, no. The one he's talking about is definitely growing conservative.
The JPS 1917 is just the 1970s. It reads similar to the King James in the sense of the kind of English that is used for it. But since then, there's been an 85 and a 99. I think there's a later one, even than 99, in terms of the JPS, more modernized translation. It is, in some ways, it is more literal than, say, like Art Scroll.
Okay.
Because Art Scroll often will translate things in accordance to what the commentaries say it's talking about,
Right.
whereas the JPS typically does not do that.
Okay, I'm gonna take a look at the Torah I have. It's not a Tanakh, it's actually Torah. But it was written by, this is back in the 20s. It's that version. And I wanna say it is, oh gosh.
Is it the Rabbi Hertz?
Reform.
Is it the Hertz?
I can't remember, I'll have to go back and take a look. It's the one I used to bring all the time.
Is that the Hertz Chumash?
No, it's not a Chumash. It's an actual, just the Torah, with the Haftorah in it, after each portion or whatever at the end. And I want to say it was Reformed. They were Reformed Jews, and it was done back in the early 20s. Real early 20s, like 21, 23 maybe, I don't know. So I'm curious as to how they translate it. Just very curious. So,
But again, Hebrew letters have, there are fewer words in Hebrew than in English. There's
Yeah.
each letter can mean more than one thing.
true. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just
Oh,
curious
all right.
as to
Mhm.
the JPS from 1917 versus the Reform Torah that I have, what it says. Because sometimes I've noticed that the Reform Torah was more conservative in their point versus some of the conservative stuff. It's around the room, you might say, so it's hard to say. It depends on the flavor. Whoever sponsored it gets their way.
I think that typically, the reason why Orthodox translations sometimes have more of a gloss than a translation is because of bringing in, commentaries from Rashi that translate it in a certain way or whatnot. So I'll point that out.
Okay.
All right. So the next passage is Behar-Bechuqqotai. That's the name of the that first or the second Torah reading. And this is the readings, although this one doesn't have the typo on it that we encountered when we did our study. The third aliyah is correct on this one.
You were just trying to stumble.
I was trying to just embarrass you, but it didn't really work very well.
I was embarrassed.
You should have. You were fine.
And Hazak Hazak V'nit Hazek.
Be strong, be strong.
So, in the usual number here is the question is, in the counting by the traditional count, rather, how many mitzvot are in this portion, this double portion? So the choices are total of 36, 24, and 12, a total of 24 with 12 and 12, a total of 40 with 22 and 18, or a total of 66 with 42 and
So
24.
last week you made the answer be C, so probably won't do that again.
Yeah, that's what I was.
So,
Well, I was looking at A or B. D's out of the question because it's 6-6.
I'd say C is highly unlikely too, just because you used the last one.
Mind you, this is a guess because I really don't know.
Yeah.
So,
A is the answer.
say again?
A is the answer.
A is the answer. All right. Linda guesses 40, FYI, for C.
Where's FYI at?
That's not on this
On
one.
C.
I don't see FYI.
No, you don't, because you can't really read between the lines.
The F, the Y, or the I?
All right, so the first one out is
Um,
D60 is the first one out.
C is a possibility.
No, I said D was not
Oh.
because it's 6-6.
Next one out is B, and then finally the next one out
Oh.
kind of covers it over there, but it is A.
You said
A is
Yeah,
correct.
A.
A? Right.
Good job.
You did
Good
too?
guess, though. I didn't know.
No, you didn't.
Yeah,
Did I say
you
A?
did. You did.
Jeez, you gotta watch this guy. It's slick.
Next time I'm
Might
gonna
be get him
record.
here today.
I'm sorry, everyone.
Okay, so the next several slides just kind of cut through some of those, not all of those.
Maybe.
You tried.
Linda said she missed it by 4. Good job. Okay, so in chapter 25 here, to rest the land during the 7th year, sometimes known as the Shabbat year. Do not work the land on the Shivayi, which is, of course, the 7th year. Do not work with trees that produce fruit during that year, and do not reap self-growth crops during the 7th year
That
as in
last
normal
one,
years.
What exactly does that mean?
Well, it's reaping, I think, is the key term from that. Because you look in, if you turn it in your Bible, to chapter 25, 5.
So the reason I asked is because I thought if you were poor and you were hungry and you were walking through a field, you could glean what you needed to eat right now.
Gleaning is different than reaping, though.
Sure. Okay, just check.
They're supposed to leave the corners.
That's during normal year.
What grows in some of your
Well,
harvest, you should not.
Typically, if you pick your garden, there's still gonna be some that grow up there that you miss or whatever,
Right.
growing up of its own.
Well, as long as it's not a jubilee year, you only have to, your 6th year should produce enough for your 7th and 8th year. So, I wonder how that works with meat.
Meat?
Doesn't.
You don't grow meat, but you got cattle.
Well,
So
in
you
the
can't
fifth
slaughter
year,
them?
the cow grows twice as big, so that you can have meat through the next 2 years.
I'm not sure about that.
Jeez,
You don't grow a cow. You don't plant a cow.
I know that.
Grow them on your field.
They
Don't plant them though.
Yeah.
Plant them in your field. Set 'em there.
So you can have a lot of steak.
Let 'em run out of
Saying,
sand.
Well, that's a Hereford.
yeah, it's got 4 legs, see, all standing on the ground, watering good.
Sometimes when I check my seeds to see if they germinate, when I have chickens, I'll be like, they're starting to hatch.
I think the issue would be keeping your cattle healthy, given if you don't do it right, you don't get the extra food on the 6th year.
So
So,
why couldn't that be an indicator nowadays in the land of when the 7th year is? If you're going along and then you have a year that produces twice as much.
Bumper crop.
That's
Bumper crop, you know, hey, that's
That's
gonna
an
last me a
indicator.
few years.
yeah.
Could that be, I mean, you couldn't say for sure, it could be a freak.
So I got a question. I was told a while back that in Israel, some do not even observe this at all.
I think some try to do it. To what extent, I think it varies. 'Cause as we talked about, it's often done as we're not violating the command because we don't own the land during that time period. If you lease the land to somebody else,
That's
they
what-
work it.
There was a
but-
point Nehemiah brought up that some of them will lease the land for that year, so technically, it's not your land that year. I mean, you're not benefiting from the crop that year.
Right.
And then after that year, you get it
That's
back.
trying to cheat.
I'm telling you.
That is bad.
As if God doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, it's still,
Still
it
is
doesn't-
money from their crops.
well, it doesn't violate the command as in you're not working the land, but it does violate the part of give the land a Sabbath rest.
Exactly.
Well, you could
Yeah.
say, hey,
Yeah.
that's his land. If you don't give it a rest,
No.
that's his land this year.
But I don't see how you can get away with that because the land is yours. It's coming back to you. It's still your land.
I guess if you made a lease agreement, you'd have to put that in there.
Yep.
But here's,
Maybe
here's
that
what,
may be-
here's the way out on that probably is, God said, even though that's their land, the tribe, God said, but the land really is mine. You are sojourners on it.
Yep.
So even if they lease it to somebody else, it's still God's, and God said what to do with his land.
Yep.
Like they had a 10-year lease on it, and then that came up during that time, of course. And then that whoever leased it should observe that, really,
Well, really though, it's not really done that way. It's leasing it for the year.
until they open it.
Well, leasing it for the either the 7th year or the Yovels, or the 49th year or the Yovel. And so that would be, so allow them to not break the command to work the land themselves.
They get it back, so, all right,
Yep.
okay.
So to me, it's you're breaking the Torah at that point. Trying to use semantics, and I'm sorry about
They
it.
do that same thing on leaven, when you're not supposed to have leaven.
Yeah.
Well,
Have a non-observant person keep it. until
right.
after.
You can sell your
Mhm.
11 to your chametz to a Gentile, so to speak.
So what if you turn around and sell it to them, but you don't buy it back? You go buy your own somewhere else when the time's ready.
Well, I guess the point is though with the leaven it's a bit easier because you don't own the leaven; it's not
Sure.
yours.
You're
And
supposed to burn it, aren't you?
well, it's supposed to be not. You can't. It's not to be seen within your
Gates.
gates.
Right.
So that you're not violating that by having it out. What a lot of stores do is because of the inventory, the cost of inventory, they'll say, okay, well, it will not be seen because we'll cover it up so you can't
Yeah, that's
see it.
covered up.
The guy, Jim Staley, said he puts it, they take all the leaven and put it in storage.
Who?
Jim Staley.
Who's he?
Some kind of, what's it called, Passion for Truth Ministries.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Never
That's what
heard
he
of
said they do.
Been some prison time.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he did. I
Freezer.
don't agree with everything he says, for sure.
Yeah, that's.
So go to the next slide.
I believe it's.
And right at the end of it.
There's
But if you're gonna speak another nation, the language of another nation.
nothing interpreted.
It's about self-growth of grapes. Don't do that either. Do not basically reap or gather the self-growth of grapes
Does it say that?
25:5.
Yes, it does.
So,
Because the other stuff is, you can glean what grows on its own.
So 25:5 says, "What grew on its own from seeds of your previous harvest, do not harvest. And the grapes you set aside for yourself, do not gather in. A year of rest it shall be for the land." So the gathering in, I think, is the key part, which I understand that kind of be the reaping part of that, because it is essentially living off of what was grown in previous years as your primary. If you do the doubling of it, there will be some that is allowed.
Can't the poor do it though? Because they couldn't glean and gather.
But they're,
for that.
they're not really reaping,
Could
they're
they-
just gleaning.
Well, that's what I mean. If it grows on its own, the owner's already got his
Mhm.
crops off and stored to carry him over the next
2 years.
couple of years.
Yeah.
The poor can't do that.
can't glean
Yeah, it
what's
says,
much.
you do not do this, and then verse 6, this shall be the Shabbat of the land, or the Shabbat produce of the land for you to eat. For you, your servant, your maidservant, and for your hired laborer and your resident alien who dwell with you, and for your animal, and for the beast that is in your land. So it's not reaping what was grown, but it's, if the land just produces it, it's fine to get.
Be right back.
Okay, do you want us to?
Okay.
No, go on, I'll be right back.
So you mean like any kind of wild grown produce you could eat?
Yes. But if it's from, it specifically reads as if, like in verse 5, what grew on its own from seeds of your previous harvest.
Yeah, like it was a late sprouting seed or something.
Yeah. You're not
The
supposed
seeds
to,
that fell back down,
Yeah,
then you're not supposed to harvest those.
or that's, I mean, once you reap a harvest, so essentially that field, whatever grows from the previous harvest that comes up, is really kind of considered to be not on limits.
You can't eat that.
No, it's not. It's not. It's because it's
Yeah.
what grew on its own of your previous harvest. Don't harvest. And the
Yeah.
grapes from your previous grapes.
so that's just for you,
Because
Yeah,
I
you
know
can't-
my garden, I get
You,
that.
the farmer, can't gather those.
but.
That is for your servant, your maidservant, your hired labor, your resident alien, all who dwell with you. So they can.
So a gleaner could do it,
Yes, a gleaner could.
Because they weren't
could get
able
those.
to gather 2 years worth back to eat.
and they're not named right there of your servants and all that. What you just read.
Well, they're on the list of people who can gather. It's
Oh,
for
can
them.
get it.
Yeah, it shall be the Sabbath produce land for you to eat, for you, in other words, your servant, your maidservant. So it's a something that they can gather of themselves
To
to
carry them over the next 2
Oh, I
years.
see, I see. I know my garden, I get like volunteer tomato plants. Somehow,
I think that's kind of what they're talking about.
I got a bunch of parsnips and those are hard to grow anyway. But I always get a lot of stuff.
A few minutes ago here, but similar comments from Cece and Linda. Cece says the land isn't man's possession, the land is Yah's.
Yeah.
And Linda comments they're twisting the Torah, and the land she also comments the land belongs to God. So yeah, I agree with those. All right, so let's continue.
But that's in the land. Do we have to do that here?
I think that's one of those
I think
things.
It's a good practice, probably.
It could be a training practice,
Yeah.
but it's not really the land.
You're not breaking the law if you do it here.
No, if you eat, I mean, the land here doesn't necessarily get the Sabbath rest. I mean, you can say that the whole world is Yahweh's possession. These mitzvot specifically apply to the land of Israel. And so you can do it here as a training kind of venture if you'd like to do that.
Well, they kind of do that, a lot of them, in
Rotating
crop
crops.
rotation.
Yeah, well, the concept of crop rotation is kind of derived off of
Mhm.
the Torah for that.
Yeah.
But often it'll be growing something else in that land when
So
you.
it doesn't keep drawing up the same minerals, it's
Right.
different minerals.
So it may not be quite the same because you're still using the land in that seventh year, but for a different crop, potentially. But so it is not a mitzvah that's required for anywhere but the land. Yeah.
That's amazing though.
And 25:12 says to sanctify the Yovel, sanctify the Jubilee. So to sanctify is to set apart. It says for Jubilee year, it is Kodesh, and it shall be to you from the field. Hasadeh, the field, that you may eat.
So the 49th year plus the Yovel is 2 years. So you'd have to get enough in the 6th year for 3 years.
Right, that's what it kind of says here, actually. It says exactly that. You have to do that, yeah. Because you can plant in the 8th year,
Yes.
and so eat that planting in the 9th,
But
essentially.
that 8th year planting isn't going to be ready until
The 9th year.
9th year.
You plant in the Yovel?
Almost 9th year.
No, the 8th year, excuse me.
After the
You got seventh
So-
year, you don't do anything,
Right.
you rest.
Then you got the 8th year.
In the eighth year, you plant.
Except in the Yovel, you'd have to give it another year.
Yes, you have to plant in the 9th year.
Right. Now, when you do your counting of to the next Yovel, the math doesn't work if it's 50 and then 1 for this is a 1. The math really works if it's 49 years and the 50th year is also the first year of counting to the next 7th year. So the cycle is
So year
49
50
years
is
plus 50.
And it's year one.
Yes. That's correct.
Yeah, you don't plant that year either. So the
Right.
49th to 50th, you don't plant.
CC says crop rotation / giving land a rest is part of good stewardship of something that is valuable to our survival.
Yeah, it is. Definitely a beneficial thing you can use anywhere in the world, but the command is that you for sure will do it in Israel, or in the land.
I know, I've heard of farmers doing that here. I wonder if God blessed them because of it.
Well, we were talking about crop rotations. In this field, you plant something, and in the next 1 or 2 years, you won't plant the same thing there, you plant somewhere else. Either let that rest or plant something else.
You plant, I think you plant like peas or legumes, legumes, and it puts the nitrogen back in, so naturally. And then all those roots, the bacteria you need for those plants to make the stuff they need will grow on those roots. So if you let it rest, you're gonna get probably a lot of that good stuff in your soil.
Goober peas are good for that. Goober peas.
Peanuts would, yeah.
That's a goober peas.
Yeah.
So,
So 25:14 is there's 2 mitzvot drawn from that as to the Torah of buying and selling, the general term here, what to do, and then it says don't defraud, don't exploit one another in buying and selling land. Or could be applied to anything. Don't defraud your brother. But it's really talking about, in verse 13, it's talking about his ancestral heritage. So it's talking about land here, and because it's, in verse 15 clarifies the way you do it, but you calculate its value is according to the number of years until the Yovel.
And somewhere else it alludes to the number of crops you're going to
Yes,
get off of.
right. That's how you value it, according to the
Yeah.
number of crops. Yeah.
So don't defraud,
Mhm.
you pay more in one instance and less for the other because you don't get as many crops.
Right.
You're only going to have 2 growing seasons, you're not going to pay that much for it.
Right. If it's only, yes, exactly. Yeah.
I got a question. So, every 7 years, you don't harvest, you don't plant, harvest. But what's the 49 years? Is that when you return the land back to, or is that every 7 years also?
Well, I think it's the 50th year in other words, the 50th year is the same as year 1, but that is the Jubilee year that you
Release
return.
all the debts?
Yes, release the debts and the land returns to its previous owner.
So what's the 49 then?
It's the 7th of 7, so I'd say
Oh.
a normal 7th, year, so to speak.
7 years of those land Sabbaths?
Yeah. So one of the things that this is one of the places where you can see that Shabbat in the Torah doesn't necessarily only mean the 7th day of the week, because it talks about a Shabbat of years.
Shabbat meaning rest.
And we're gonna have the 7,000 years too, right? Okay. We're gonna rest.
It's not in this Torah portion. So it's 7 Shabbats. So it's 7. It's really using it as the number 7 in this context, I think. Shabbat means rest, but it's a Shabbat of years, so it's a 7-year period.
They will. Yeah.
490 years prophecy.
Yeah, it's
70 weeks, 70 weeks, 490 years. And when the Savior said, it's about forgiveness for sin, that's not sin. I tell you, forgive your brother 7 times 7. It's 490 again.
Yeah.
25:17 is one that is a bit of a gloss in terms of how the mitzvot are counted. It's literally don't exploit one another. 25:17.
Yeah.
It's traditionally understood to be talking about by speech. It says literally, do not cause pain each man to his fellow. You should fear your God, for I am, Adonai, your God. The translator in the interlinear has a parenthetical mark. Mark says verbally, and so that's understood within traditional Judaism is to not cause pain verbally to others. This is because elsewhere you can derive that you're not supposed to cause pain to other people, not to hurt other people, to not hurt them. So it's kind of drawn as a separate mitzvah to not. This is on the exploiting or to not cause pain. But the word there for causing pain is it's the same word used as for defraud in verse 14. And he says to not defraud your fellow man in verse 14. It's the word tonu, but it's the same word here, lo tonu. So to not defraud again, you can use it. It's the same word. It's translated differently as defraud in verse 14, but in verse 17 as to cause pain or to exploit one another. So this one has don't exploit one another in buying and selling land, so it could defraud. This one, then verse 17 doesn't list land, and so that word verbally or by speech is added in for, perhaps implied, but it is perhaps more a general don't defraud your fellow man, whether in whatever. Yeah, it doesn't have to be land, it can be anything else. So speech might be implied. It might be simply more of a general sort of comment. Don't do it in anything, which I think either way could work. All right. Do not sell out holdings in the land of Israel in perpetuity. How you redeem the land in the Jubilee year. Walled city is a separate issue. Chapter 25, verses 29 and 30. How would you redeem that?
Redeem what?
A house in a walled city, or property in a walled city. Because it's not a field, right?
Only the priest can do that, right?
Well, it's a time, it's a limit on the time that can be redeemed.
1 year.
That in the same year that it was sold.
Right.
Yeah.
But I thought if it belonged to a priest, it could be redeemed. Because the priest was not given land, so his house could be redeemed. And he's not limited to the year. Yes.
Because it's not land, right?
Right. It's because they were not given lands.
Mhm.
So
They were
Simeon
given-
and priests,
They were given houses.
they were given houses. So their houses
Yeah.
can be
In verse 32, I don't think
Yes.
it is the cities of the Levites, the houses of the cities of their ancestral heritage, a right of redemption that is eternal,
Mhm.
there shall be for the Levites. The word eternal there is olam.
No limit to when they can redeem.
Right.
That's amazing.
So you probably don't want to, if you're buying land, or buying a house in town, you may not want to buy it from a Levite because it might not be yours.
This is true.
So that might lower the value of that house. The valuation might be whatever it is, but you might not want to.
Yeah.
So. All right. Don't loan to your brother at interest from 25:37. Do not compel a Hebrew servant to do the work of a slave, verse 39. Brothers impoverished with you and is sold to you, do not work with him the work of a servant or slave. The word there for servant or slave is the same word, right? Aved is the word that can be translated either as servant or as slave. It can also be, I mean, it's the same root word as you know for like a Torah service, avodah. It's the same root word as that.
Oh, that means work, doesn't it?
Avodah means service, essentially. Like the Torah service is avodah. But the work, well, you can actually look at the word avad, and if you make the vet into a bet, you can see Obed, like Obadiah, for example, servant of Yah or slave of Yah. You can put it either way, right? But I think that you can translate that into a lot of languages and even into English, right? Obed could be something like in English, obedience, right? So in other words, you're doing what you're supposed to do. You're doing the work you're supposed to do is obedience, and the Hebrew word corresponding would be obed or aved. It's that same word, obed. Servant, because you're doing the work of a servant. You're obeying perhaps what your master said to do. Obedience. You're doing what you're supposed to do.
I think the modern Hebrew, that means work.
It may.
I was studying, it said, ani avodah on that word.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it makes a difference between servant and employee.
Avodah.
Servant and what?
Employee.
Yes. I don't know where the word employee is, but it's a different word than servant here. One is a. Do you know do you have a verse for that
I'd have
word?
to look.
Yeah.
It was in my portion already.
Yeah, it was. I think it's in the text as employee or one who works
Yeah.
for you. So
Not to do certain things, but
Mhm.
you will treat him as an employee
right,
instead of a servant.
not a servant. Yeah, you have to pay him. Okay. So what is the Torah of a Canaanite bondsman?
So, the interesting, it says your
Yep.
brother, it means your actual family brother.
I think it
Um,
means fellow Hebrew,
Right, okay.
Yeah, yeah, because it doesn't.
because they're brothers. They're
Yeah,
12 brothers.
right. Yeah. Ah.
Well, it kind of starts back in verse 35. If your brother becomes impoverished and falter and does not mean support in your community, you shall strengthen him. A ger or a proselyte, it says, but a ger or a stranger or a resident, toshav, so he can live in your community. Do not take from him advanced interest and legal purchase and fear your God. And let your brother, again that's the word for brother, live with you. Your money do not give him for interest for illegal purchase, and do not give your food for illegal purchase, so to speak. So I think it is the word for brother, but it seems to me, because it's the same sort of listing as ger, toshav, anybody in your community. I think all those together, or it's being, you're not supposed to lend at interest to those.
So it makes me, nobody's supposed to be charging interest. Would that be wrong to say that?
Well, the banks are not necessarily would consider you their brother.
Okay. I get it.
So, a Torah of a Canaanite bondsman, 25, 44, and 46, 246. It says, your slave or your maidservant, your servant or your maidservant that belong to you from the nations who surround you, From among them you may purchase a servant or a maidservant, or a slave or a maidservant. Also among the children of the residents who live with you. From them you may purchase, and from their family that is with you, whom they begot in your land, may be for you as hereditary property. So that is essentially, if they sell themselves to you, you can use them as your servants, and it says as hereditary property. It doesn't mean you're going to be treating them unfairly, though. That would be very, very illegal.
In fact, they wanted to sell themselves.
Right, there'd be a purpose for it
They
because
didn't come
they're
from far shores and capture you and take you to be a
right,
servant.
right. Yeah.
You sold yourself to them as a servant.
Okay, so verse 53 is the, well, that is a reference to a hired worker. Shavir is that word there. Shavir, excuse me. 2553 is the word for employee or hired worker. So like a hired worker, don't allow a stranger, but this is really talking about a hired worker. So it's not something from your, necessarily from your community, but it's for someone who is, somebody you pay to work for you. Don't prostrate yourself to engraved stone for worship. That's from chapter 26, verse 1. So, don't worship idols. Don't bow down to idols. I would have thought that, this might come from, chapter 20 of the book of Exodus, right? Because there's a thing about idolatry. But I think the command here is the word to bow down, to prostrate. It says not to do idolatry in chapter 20 of Exodus. Here it says specifically to not bow down to or prostrate yourselves to worship those.
Specifically worship,
Mhm.
active worship.
Active worship, yeah. Okay. Toward the valuation of consecrated persons. Now, at prison last night, there was some concern about why are women valued less than men?
What's one of those commands called that says because God said so?
Well, it isn't the thing of Behar-Bechuqqotai with chok meaning the command that God said so.
I'm just trying to concentrate.
I think you could actually, it is a hook. God said that's the value of it.
Yep.
But I think you could also look at it as it is a bit of logic as well, right? Because you're looking at the value of a worker, someone who can work. If you're going to hire somebody, these are for the valuation of vows, though, right? I'm valuing the worth of X person or X piece of property, essentially to give to the temple. You're not actually giving that person to the temple. You're giving the value of that person, to the coffers of the Levites.
Well,
So it's the value of the individual. So an older person, I'm valued at 15 shekels, and Cece is valued at only 10. Don't
Don't you think that has to do with the workload that they can do?
It's absolutely about that, because it's the same. I think the same context as how much is a bit of land worth for the Yovel. It's based
How much
on how
can you
many
produce?
crops you're going to get for it.
Right.
And so there's probably less produce from an old man than from a young man. You got a lot less work left in him or her. And that's what that is. So the value of a child is, not a lot, but it's based on, eventually, if you, it's going to get a lot. You can get a lot of work out of them, but eventually, that's in a few years, because when they're 5 years old, you're not going to get much work out of them, right?
got a lot of energy, but they can't do everything.
But a little older than that.
They're a lot of
they could be
energy until
house-
nap time.
House servants and things like that.
Yeah.
It has to be kind of wisdom of the old person and the energy of the 5-year-old.
Yeah.
In the comments, yeah, men could do harder work.
This is mostly an agrarian type of society.
Yes, very much.
Mostly muscle.
Mostly labor.
Mhm.
Because nowadays, an older person, they got a lot of wisdom. I mean, they can tell everybody what needs to be done,
They can be foreman.
keep things going and make more money.
They'd be the foreman.
Yeah, right. But back then,
So this is kind of gets further on the consecration of fields and animals, not doing substitutions for those. Don't redeem that which has been consecrated. The Torah, the tithe of animals, and to the holiness or the kadoshness of substitute offering. You're not supposed to substitute that which has been devoted. And so we talked about the in Mount Sinai. This is where that I said the JPS 1917. It says, and the Lord spoke to Moses in Mount Sinai, saying. That's what the JPS reads. The word harar is to stand on top of, like a round thing, but it's also the word for pregnant and conceive is also a similar root word. So you can see something that's bulging up, like a woman's, her pregnancy. Okay. So, thoughts and questions here. What did you like about this reading? And, what bothers you about it?
I'll tell you what I like about it.
Yeah.
It never changes. It's always the same. You always get something new or a better understanding
Okay.
every year.
Yeah. This really didn't have a lot of personal interaction. So it's hard to put, with whom or what can you relate. I think that would be a hard one to answer, I think.
Yeah, nowadays, maybe back in the quote slave era, you could associate a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
What was that word for the name of the laws that God tells you to do something just because He told you to do it? Hokim?
Hokim is plural, yeah.
Yeah.
It could be Hokim or Hokot, depending on talking about for male,
Right.
masculine, or feminine.
Yeah, I just,
Hmm?
They're
Yes.
yes.
Yeah. Hokot or Hokim.
It's interesting, I think that, like I said earlier, every year you come back to it, it's like being refreshed in your memory. You can't get away from not doing what God said. I mean, you can forget, you can purposefully go out and not do it, but if you stop and think about it, that would be stupid.
Yeah.
But if you forget, you make a mistake, there's always, look how much in the scriptures right there, just in this Torah portion. He gives you the opportunity to make amends. I mean, my goodness gracious, he went 490 years before he decided to send them out of the land. It's kind of like, and if you read this every year,
Yeah.
I'm like, there's so much that God gives you in redeeming or being forgiven or just, hey, I'm sorry, God, in humility, please forgive me, I sinned. Boom, okay, you're right back on track. That isn't, I'm not saying you should go out and sin just to turn around and say, God forgive me. I'm just saying it's there.
So you're advocating for a 1-year Torah cycle, not a 3 or 7 year. What you're saying?
Yeah, I'm all about the 1-year Torah cycle because, after 2 years, I'm liable to like, huh? Did it really say that? What are you talking about? I never read that, really. I don't like the 3-year or 7-year cycle because I don't see what you get out of it. I mean, just go for the 1 year. And
the advantage of those, of course, is you can go
More in
deeper because you're going through less verses per week.
Yeah, but it's not, to me.
There's different ways of doing it, though, too.
Yeah.
Tim
Hegg is a 3-year cycle guy.
Right, but often it's not. You're not. The 3-year cycle is often written to keep the same cycle in the sense that you're doing the first third of the portion,
Mhm.
and then you're skipping some things and going to the next week you're in a different portion, but you're still in the same portion as a 1 year cycle, just doing less verses of it and doing it for
Right.
3 times. So it kind of
Right.
keeps you in track in that sense. But you can go in deeper to that. Yeah, I've seen 3 years. I've seen a 7 year cycle as well. It's really, we've never done it. We've done a 3 year cycle a couple times.
There's really no command about cycles in the study. It's just,
Yeah.
Well, and Devarim, it talks about reading it once a year.
yeah.
In the
It was
gates.
read in the people.
Well, no, it doesn't say once a year. It says
Really?
in the 7th year, you're supposed to read it.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
That's right.
where was it I read about?
So that's why you typically read it every year, because not knowing which one's the 7th year. That's kind of,
Oh, there you are.
that's why, that's,
Can't miss it then, can you?
right.
But maybe that's where they get the 7 year cycle.
Yeah.
I thought it was,
Yeah.
you read it in the gate every year.
Talking about can't remember it from week to week. They had a whole year not to remember it.
Yeah. All right, so can we glean any things from these
7
readings about Elohim or Yeshua? We can say, certainly, what we talked about already, his precision.
Yep,
He likes to do things a certain way.
yep,
It doesn't always have to make logical sense to humans.
right?
Those are learning points, right?
Say again?
Those are learning points
Yeah.
to build about our obedience, I think. You going to say something, Eldon?
I've got, it's all about sevens and Sabbaths.
Yeah.
He never wants the Messiah astray in the Gospels. If you read it, you can see where everything points to just going to the Torah.
Yeah.
And gleaning it, he supported it 100%, so. I
Yeah,
can't-
there are he had supported also certain interpretations of Torah, because you can,
Yes.
you can be divided by a common language, so to speak, in terms of observation of what to
Yeah.
do with it. What is the text telling you to do? Linda says the text tells us about God's character. Yeah. What is
Yeah,
it?
What to do.
Yeah. What do we do with this portion? What are we told to do with this?
And can we do it since we're not in the land?
Right.
That's
On the previous question, Cece says, I guess for me, it's a reminder about being responsible for what God has entrusted to us, that I am his servant. Well, these are commands that we can do if, ... right? I mean, the giving, the offerings that might be in the text, the things that can't be done because they're not functioning priesthood. I don't know if there's any of those this time around, but the offerings that are being discussed that you can make, the vows you can make. I guess you could. I don't know how you'd actually do those things without a functioning priesthood, though. You really can't give the valuation of a person to the priest if there isn't a priesthood. I mean, you could give it to I guess you could give it to your local, rabbi or something, but it would not be quite the same.
It wouldn't be the same at all.
But it's got to be in silver shekels. You can't give them dollars, right?
Right. Or Morgan silver gold.
Nope, doesn't count. That's
At least
the coin of the Gentiles.
That'd be a temple shekel.
Yeah,
Well,
exchange rate is 20-1.
I don't know if this is right or not, I'm just throwing it out there. What about, there's no temple service, but there are descendants of priests.
Yeah. Well, some years ago, we gave Gershom Solomon the Pidyon Haben, the silver shekel for redemption price,
Yeah,
for the idea of at some point in time,
yeah, and I've done that for my family,
yeah,
How much is it?
What is it?
the redemption price.
for
a child?
firstborn son.
First one says.
So how much is that?
Was it 5 shekels?
No, in today's US dollars.
Well, the temple shekel, I think I read in my note,
Yeah.
printed notes, is like 0.339 something of an ounce for one temple shekel.
Yeah, it's not a whole lot, honestly.
No, it's,
Value-wise, it's not a
if
whole
you
lot.
round it, it's .04 or something, or
Point four, yeah.
Yeah.
So it would be,
So it'll be 5 of those, 5.4s.
so a few ounces of silver, which probably silver, what's the silver price today? I don't know, is it $20 like that perhaps?
Yeah, about almost 28,
Okay.
yeah.
So I'd like to do that for my first one section.
That's what I did.
So how do I,
How do you know who to send it to?
yeah, I don't have, like, you sent it to Gerson Salma, I know who he is, but I don't have.
I sent mine to Marty Coleman.
Okay,
Now, I don't know, it doesn't, you can't say, oh, well, they're not good priests. They're of the priestly line,
third, the
Yeah.
priestly line.
but how do you define good priest? Because they don't do the temple service right? Well, there's no temple to serve.
Right. So you can walk it out to a degree, whether.
To how far you can take it.
Yeah. Mhm.
So if Wayne, if you could help me with that, I would like to do that for my son.
Okay.
I did it for my whole family,
Did you
all
give
the
him,
first
did you
ones.
give him enough for, temple tax?
No. It's just Pidyon Haben.
Okay, if you could help me do that, I would like to, do that, before Rosh Hashanah.
Okay.
This thing is big, I'm sorry. I don't know how to write it now.
I do.
The blood sugar is going high. Is that what it's saying?
No? Blood on the risers?
Linda says she'd like to do that also for the firstborn. So we'll get together with that. All right, so how would you summarize this text? How would you give us a short summary? So okay, here's a scenario. Hey, we're studying Torah portion, double Torah portion, Behar-Bechuqqotai this week. Oh, what's that about?
On the mount, Sinai.
Is that Sinai in Arabia or Sinai in
Arabia. Jebel El-Oz. Somewhere in that
Well,
vicinity.
they're not gonna understand that either.
right? Now you've totally lost us.
It's in Arabia.
Yep.
I mean, you read the New Testament, you read the Old Testament,
Well,
as people would
All
call it.
said so,
New
right?
Testament.
It's-
All said so.
You think? I mean, you can't get away from that. Even in Elijah, or I mean,
There's a lot of evidence there too.
it's like, that's where it is. And if
Down in
it,
the cave?
yeah,
Yeah.
and if it weren't so, I don't think the Saudis would have put a gate around it, or a fence around it. Well, they got a fence around it, why? Because they know. Nobody's gonna go that far to protect something if they don't believe that's true. Just like the, pole that,
Columns.
yeah, that Skippy found. And all of a sudden,
Skip.
Saudi Arabia done hauled it off.
You're talking about Ron Wyatt?
Yeah.
So Cece says one thing you can do is 25-35,
Moses put there.
which is if a member of your people has become poor, so he can't support himself among you, you are to assist him as you would a foreigner or temporary resident, so he can continue living with you. Do not charge him interest or otherwise profit from him, but fear your God, so your brother can continue living with you.
So it associates the foreigner living with you as your brother also.
So, yeah, I think it's just another way of saying the same thing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Federal Reserve been ripping us off for years. It's time to take it from there.
What do we know, plunder them?
I hope soon, because the American people don't own those banks.
Well, the reserve, yeah.
Yeah. that's
So
all.
what Cece says a good summary is starts in chapter 26, verse 3. If you live by my regulations, observe my mitzvot, and obey them, then I will provide the rain you need in its season, the land will yield its produce, and the trees in the field will yield their fruit. Your threshing time will extend until the grape harvest, and your grape harvesting will extend until the time for sowing seed. You will eat as much as you want and live securely in the land. That's a pretty good summary, isn't it? If you obey, you'll be blessed.
You know,
How much will be?
you know,
All right.
it's off the subject just a wee bit. Where is the red heifer offered? Is it on the Mount of Olives? And is it on, Shavuot?
I don't know that it has to be done on a particular date,
Okay,
but the traditional understanding is that there was a kind of a bridge built between the temple and the Mount of Olives so that they could do that red heifer offering on the Mount of Olives.
well, I know they did a practice up there a
Ash-
while back.
With ashes for purification, right? You know, that's.
Well, supposedly, the word is, I don't know if it's clickbait or not, they're saying that this year is the last year of the remaining red heifers that qualified to be offered. And they're reaching their third year, and after the third year, they can't be called heifer. Supposedly.
Well, you do know that it's translated as heifer, but it's the same word as cow. So,
I'm just saying.
So
all right, so Torah trivia. What is the connection between this Torah portion and American history?
It ain't Harvard, is it?
Nope,
Good.
Is it related to leasing and redeeming land
nope,
or crops?
nope.
Oh, I got an idea. Does it have to do with bankruptcy?
No,
Okay, good.
Anything financial?
no.
Okay. Connection between American history and this Torah portion.
Slave related?
Megatron.
How about the Constitution?
Is this a trick question?
It's not a trick question.
Does it have to do with the Constitution?
Not directly, no. Well, I mean, not really. I mean, it is similar in the sense of it is an American historical
The Mayflower
event. Nope. Here it is, my friends. The Liberty Bell.
Oh, please.
Proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. Leviticus 25:10.
Oh,
That's cool. It's only one problem.
is that actually printed on the bill or stamped on the bill or whatever?
The verses, it says the same thing. It says, as I quoted, Leviticus 25:10. Yeah.
Is that the actual bell, the actual historical bell?
The
Because
cracked
the real
one.
one had a crack and they repaired it.
Yep, this has two little bolts in it. Tradition says the Liberty Bell rang out July 8th, 1776 to summon the citizens of Philadelphia, PA for the first public reading of the Declaration of Independence. So, Constitution, not really. Declaration of Independence.
Well, I kind of put it all in the same thing. Constitution, Declaration, you know. That's interesting.
CC says, I think Linda is correct.
Well, bro, most
Indentured
basically-
servant. Yeah. The idea of indentured servant is part of, it's similar to, I suppose, but it's not quite the same. I guess you could argue that indentured servitude was derived from, the 7-year time period. Essentially was you'd be freed in the 7th year. So that is.
So is indentured a self-volunteered servitude?
It is volunteer. It's the same thing as selling yourself to. Yeah.
That's what my journeyman used to tell me when I was a public servant. Indentured servant. Like, thank you and everything.
Well, you got your passage to the new world. You got to work for somebody else for 7 years. All right. Well, let us close. But thank you for allowing us to midrash on your word. Thank you for all your blessings. We thank you in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Okay.
Thank you for all those online. Shalom, shalom.
Yay.
If you figured that out on the shekel, I found it. This one says 4